À-bas-le-ciel.
I tried to volunteer to be in the fucking, you know, the Cube of Truth shit. You know the Cube of Truth shit. They wouldn't let me do Cube of Truth. And when I've told other people that, they're like flabbergasted, because of course all these groups are like, oh, everyone's welcome to participate. Everyone's welcome to get involved. Nope. Some people are welcome and some aren't. If I do an open mic night at a comedy club, I think I can really reach like 200 people in a more meaningful way than standing on a street corner in Los Angeles. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about comparing street activism to something perfect. I'm just talking about comparing it to like real alternatives you may have access to. But I have already mentioned one of the other problems, which is just the barriers to entry. So for me, I couldn't even participate in a silent protest. The level of censorship, so that's a silent protest, the Cube of Truth. I wouldn't even talk. I'd just stand there in my vegan t-shirt, you know, right? Like protesting. That would be my job, would be just to stand there holding, a TV screen, right? And I couldn't do that because there are whatever reason the snobs, like I don't know why. Nobody told me why. Is it that they're too left wing or they're too right wing? Like why? I don't know. But they shut me out of participating in a silent protest. If I get on stage as a stand-up comedian, you know, who's the gatekeeper? Who's the barrier to entry? Maybe the audience is going to laugh. Maybe they're going to boo. You know, maybe we're going to have a good time. Maybe not, right? But that's really different. Right? And maybe I'm going to listen to the audience. Maybe they're going to talk a little too, and I'm going to respond to that, and maybe I'm going to shut them down. There's a bit of a dynamic that way. But, you know, I mean, when you think about it, that's really a question. Who are the gatekeepers? So I know Quest doesn't want to roll with DXE anymore. So now if you want to protest, who do you roll with? I mean, because again, you can be a one-man protest. I think it's a lot worse than being a stand-up comedian. But like you guys must now be trying to compromise with somebody, Mercy for Animals or some group. And you know, each one has to what? Mercy for Animals. There are things that are messed up about them. PETA. There are things that you got to make different compromises with each of these groups, right?
À-bas-le-ciel.
Hey, sorry. So I'm interrupting a social evening, evidently. Yeah, I'm sorry, but
no, talk over down to talk about things. He's an activist. He was in that. Did you hear that stuff? The whole Antler restaurant in Toronto.
No. So there's a restaurant that specializes in deer meat or something called Antler, I'm guessing, or what?
Well, I think there was a video that went pretty viral. The owner came to the front of the window and started butchering like a deer leg in front of the activists to piss him off or whatnot, and that went pretty viral. So you were there, I think.
Yeah, I was there, and it was a little bit shocking actually. We didn't expect that protest to become so viral of all of the things they could have covered in animal advocacy, like this one thing where the chef and the owner of the restaurant brought out the leg of a deer to like chop in front of activists. Became sort of this interesting story, I guess, because there's a bit of a conflict there, so media finds it entertaining.
Yeah. Well, you live. Yeah. So I was just gonna mention though, like you have to live really close to this stuff in food services. We've got a college that we're gonna study vegan baking at. And it's a college that does special courses in plant-based cuisine, plant-based cooking. Like they are sort of pro-vegan. They have several vegans on staff. But at the same time, there's like a poster up like, next month, take our special class in like how to butcher a hog, how to save money by like buying a whole hog and butchering it yourself. You know what I mean? Like these special classes and stuff like that. It's on the same table. It's on the same... they do the special class on like vegan cuisine and they do the special class on how to butcher a hog. And it's like, we've all got to get along. You literally don't have a choice. You know what I mean? Oh, you want to study vegan cuisine here? Great. We also do classes on hog butchering,
Yeah, but like the fact that Doug got media attention over the girl in DXC that covered herself in animal feces before, and that got like no media attention or whatever. Like you're laying in the street with fecal matter and like a little argument between the store owner and vegans. I don't know. It's weird what gets traction on the internet.
This is the low-hanging fruit phenomenon, right? Like, can you if you want to dumb down your content to make it relevant to that kind of mass media? I mean, it's a very different creative challenge.
Are you going to animal advocacy camp?
No, I've never even heard of it. Like, I'm just being honest with you. I've never even heard of it.
They're doing it in Victoria. What's the date? Are you in Victoria right now?
I am. Well, gee, who do you think would have invited me to that? Do you think Jordan would have invited me to go to that? No? I mean, like, there's not a lot of people here. We saw Jordan on the street the other day. He's looking like a Ken doll. He's real well manicured. But yeah, I bumped into Jordan. He's like, "Hey man, what's up?" Hey. It's not that big a town. You walk past each other from time to time. But no, even at the event afterwards, I did that video with the vegan bodybuilder. That's on my channel. I met him at Jordan's event, so I was jazzed to talk to him, and he was really excited to talk to me, and we did this video together. And Jordan came by and like stiffly shook my hand. But like, dude, I mean, like there's that mentality. Some people have the mentality like, here's the pie. And now we have to fight over who gets a bigger piece of the pie, where they think of it as a static image of a pie. And then there are people who see things productively. Like, look, every day we're making new pies. Like, today we made 10. Tomorrow we can make 100. You with me? Let's all start making pie. Like, if we cooperate, there can be more pie for everybody. Where you're not seeing it as like a finite amount of pie that we got to fight over, but where we got to collaborate to be more productive so there's more pie everywhere. But, like, dude, most of the time it never gets talked about. But no, nobody has invited me to any camp. I tried to volunteer to be in the fucking, the Cube of Truth shit. The Cube of Truth shit? They wouldn't let me do Cube of Truth. And when I've told other people that, they're like flabbergasted. Because of course all these groups are like, oh, everyone's welcome to participate. Everyone's welcome to get involved. Nope. Some people are welcome and some aren't. So, like, I go, yeah.
How did they kick you out though? They just said don't come?
They kicked me out of the Facebook group. And then, I just said, yeah, okay, I'll come. Because the Facebook group, it's a Facebook group that only exists for that purpose, to, like, show up, basically, and some instructions about how to behave and stuff like that, you know what I mean? So they keep me on the Facebook group. And I remember I told this to this other guy, Harrison Nathan. I was like, look, man, this is the reality. Like, I don't live in Los Angeles or New York. Like, I don't have, like, 10 vegan groups to choose between. There are, like, 2 vegan groups here, and I can't work with either one of them. And then after I was kicked to the Facebook group, like, I wrote to Jordan, like, hey, what's up? And he wouldn't reply. Jordan and his girlfriend wouldn't reply. So it's like, okay, so I got kicked out of, for no reason, with no explanation. I'm just not welcome to attend the only form of protest, vegan protest that's ongoing in my town. But when I told Harrison Nathan this, his response was, well, look, man, if you want to do street protest, you wouldn't let that stop you. You'd go and, like, get your own table and get your own booth, and you'd start doing your own street protests. It's like, in a sense, you're right. In a sense, I can stand there alone on the street. I can be a one-man vegan protest. I can. Or, like, right now, this YouTube video, more than 10 people will see it. Like, I'm not going to be wildly optimistic here. This could have a meaningful impact, this video, on more people's lives than me standing on that street corner. And that, for me, that really is the choice I've got. For someone else, they'll have different options and different opportunities. But it's true. But I mean, anyway, look, you already know this. I see. So look, this is what comes back to my first question. I see the main positive thing about protesting on the street being the other vegans I meet. The other people who are there to protest. Is the viewing it as a rally, viewing it as networking, viewing it as, sharing within the vegan side. That I think is positive. But, like, in terms of, like, my interactions with meat eaters, like, yes, it can be. I mean, like, at random, you can meet people who really want to hear the message. But, you can also do things so you're not meeting people at random. But, yeah, my question to you was about the impact on your psychology and behavior if you're out there shouting at randoms every day.
There's a difference between outreach and shouting. Outreach, it can be pretty chill, and like you can have good conversations, but it's like under the context, I think, of what you're doing. Like if you're 10 people and you're like, hey, take this leaflet, and you're all doing it at the same time, it's different than standing like within proximity of each other and just having those conversations. Kind of like, I don't know, what's his face? Is it James Aspie or what's the other kids?
Joey Carbstrong does a lot of that. Yeah.
You have those conversations. Like, those can be pretty productive.
And I also think I don't feel at all that street activism is a static thing. I mean, it is repetitive, but I think there's innovation happening all the time. It is like a learning process. I view it personally as more of a practice, like meditation, like yoga, like any of those things where you just keep doing it and you innovate and you get better and better and you become more and more effective. So even though a lot of times we feel like we are always saying the same things to the same people, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because there's certain sort of key arguments that you expect after a while from, people who have questions, or not even arguments, just questions about veganism. But then from our side, from our perspective, it's like we just try to become better at answering those questions. Like we find more effective and efficient ways to answer those questions through analogies, through just good arguments, good reasoning. It's constantly changing, and people are trying to get more creative all the time. Because I think activists who do street activism also recognize that you can't just do the same old things all the time, because then the media gets bored of it. The people who see you doing the same thing all the time get bored of it. So it's about finding ways to stay creative and innovative. So no, I don't see it as static at all. I think people who are participating are constantly learning.
I knew one example of a guy for whom it was really psychologically positive. He started off with some kind of learning disability, and I think it wasn't the learning disability itself, but that he grew up very isolated because of his learning disability. And that's right. And there's also his family background was really religious. They were like Christian fundamentalists, so he never really talked to anybody growing up. And for him, doing vegan street activism was really like his first time talking to strangers. And he went from being a very awkward person to being a very confident public speaker through hundreds and hundreds of repetitions of having those same conversations over and over again. Yeah, I don't know though. I mean, in terms of our culture, I mean, who talks on the street? If you just think about the forum, as opposed to renting a hall at the university, as opposed to any other kind of conference or event where people come in and talk about politics or think about morality or something. I mean, the street corner is almost exclusively associated with religious fundamentalists and crackheads and idiots, right? Maniacs. I mean, if you just think about the term street preacher, you know what I mean? You're kind of starting on a weak basis by approaching a stranger on the street that way. I'm really just saying, compared to the alternatives you may have. Not everyone may have those alternatives, but I think strategically that's worth thinking about too, right? I mean, I was involved in the theater in Toronto. Like, you can also do politics on stage in a theater where people have bought a ticket and sit down to listen to what you have to say.
Street activism is actually just much more accessible, because I understand, sometimes in a proper kind of forum or university setting, you can have a more constructive dialogue happening between people that is very well facilitated and moderated, whereas in the street levels, things people could be yelling at each other. It could get really messy. But at the same time, it's like pros and cons to both, right? At the street level, it's accessible. People, and I disagree. I think you kind of cherry picked a little bit there. those kind of very negative aspects of what people commonly associate with the word street. Those are really specific examples, and yet, historically, we've seen powerful movements that take their messages to the street, and it's been for the better for everybody. If you talk about outreach and activism, public education, and bring attention to certain issues, whether it's around patriarchy and sexism or white supremacy and racism, all these kinds of things. You need to get the word out there. So
I think cherry picking. I think cherry picking is inevitable to some extent, because I do want to talk about particular examples, but I don't really valorize the academic side of the spectrum. One of the most powerful political influences in my childhood was Chris Rock, the stand-up comedian, right? I mean, Chris Rock talks about politics on a stage, and you can't say it's not inaccessible. I mean, he reaches the lowest common denominator. But I think Chris Rock is one of the most powerful political demagogues of his generation, His comedy today, I think, is less political than it was a few decades ago, because he's gotten older and, like most comedians, his material changes. But I'm going to go to Los Angeles for about 5 days. If I do an open mic night at a comedy club, I think I can really reach like 200 people in a more meaningful way than standing on a street corner in Los Angeles. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about comparing street activism to something perfect. I'm just talking about comparing it to like real alternatives you may have access to. And, that's why I mentioned university, because I'm on a university campus talking to university-age people all the time anyway. So just for me, that's easy. But I agree. I think there are a lot of just mythology about how great universities are as a place to spread ideas, and it's bullshit. But yeah, sure. I think that's the kind of question I have to ask myself.
For sure, yeah. And I think having a stage, having a platform in a more controlled setting is not necessarily always. I mean, ideologues and preachers preach on stage too, right?
Sure.
Those mega churches and things like that. There are a whole bunch of issues there too. So
sure.
I think at the end of the day, having people, being just participating in political issues, having political discussions at a street level keeps our democracy kind of healthy too, to keep people engaged. So I don't see a problem with any of that, even though some people might associate it with,
But I have already mentioned one of the other problems, which is just the barriers to entry. So for me, I couldn't even participate in a silent protest. The level of censorship, so that's a silent protest, the Cube of Truth. I wouldn't even talk. I'd just stand there in my vegan t-shirt, right? Like protesting. That would be my job, would be just to stand there holding, a TV screen, right? And I couldn't do that. Because there are whatever reason the snobs, I don't know why. Nobody told me why. Is it that they're too left wing or they're too right wing? Why? I don't know. But they shut me out of participating in a silent protest. If I get on stage as a stand-up comedian, who's the gatekeeper? Who's the barrier to entry? Maybe the audience is going to laugh. Maybe they're going to boo. Maybe we're going to have a good time. Maybe not. Right? But that's really different. Right? And maybe I'm going to listen to the audience. Maybe they're going to talk a little too, and I'm going to respond to that, and maybe I'm going to shut them down. There's a bit of a dynamic that way. But, when you think about it, that's really a question. Who are the gatekeepers? So I know Quest doesn't want to roll with DXE anymore. So now if you want to protest, who do you roll with? I mean, because again, you can be a one-man protest. I think it's a lot worse than being a stand-up comedian. But you guys must now be trying to compromise with somebody, Mercy for Animals or some group. And each one has to Mercy for Animals. There are things that are messed up about them. PETA. There are things that you got to make different compromises with each of these groups, right?
Yeah, they're all kind of fucked up in their own way. I think
the two of you is going to team up. Two-man protest.
We'll have to start a group for all the people who can get out of everything else.
Yeah. Look, I'm all about it. But like I say, for me, the street activism, I see the positive thing as being meeting other vegans. But I think if I want to talk to meat eaters, I think it's going to be stand-up comedy. I'm dead serious. I was talking to T-Cat. T-Cat has a YouTube channel. He's been going to open mic nights doing vegan stand-up comedy. So he opened his set by saying, "Yeah, I'm vegan. I only eat meat when I climb over the fence and kill my neighbor's dog." And there were people in the audience who found this so offensive. They thought it was racist against Asians, even though he's Asian, that they shut the show down. He was not allowed to continue after he was going to do a whole set of vegan comedy. I was like, you learned something from this. Maybe we can learn something from this about effective activism, no?
Oh man,
I'm not even necessarily sure the median matters. As long as you have you say street activism good for meeting other vegans, but in there's different forms. There's protests, but then there's outreach. Whereas you'll meet in the beginning, and then you grab a stack of leaflets, and then you go to your corner, and you do your thing, and you're by yourself. The conversations you're having are with you and the other person that if you grab their attention. And it can be very it's outside in the street, but it can be an intimate setting in terms of just exchanging ideas and answering questions where they don't feel like there's a whole bunch of people listening to them or judging them for what they're going to say. And if you're sincere enough in the way that you're willing to give the information and hear where they're at with their journey and their ideas of animals, I think it can be just as effective, or maybe even more effective, than having a group of people that'll take a little bit of information, but they just want out of you because you're too busy focusing on a mass amount.
Sure.
Whereas like a conversation like you and me right here and now, you get a lot out of each other from that. So I think there is like value to street activism in that sense.
For sure. You know, I do have that experience to some extent because people approach me on the street. Sometimes they approach me because they know me from YouTube. They're like, oh, that's the vegan guy. But sometimes they approach me just because I'm wearing a label that says vegan. Like I'm wearing vegan on my sleeve or on my shirt. But yeah, this shirt right now is a vegan shirt, whatever, you know. So people do approach me, but because they're approaching me, that means they want to learn or they want to ask a question. It's different than me like walking up to a stranger and being like, hey, want to talk to me about veganism? The answer is then probably going to be no. But I know you're saying you have these kinds of positive experiences.
I think I appreciate about the Cube of Truth actually, because that's kind of their strategy is they wait for people. They almost exclusively only talk to people who are interested and are actually taking the time to watch the video, so they're not wasting time talking to people who are just walking past and don't really care. So it ends up being a high percentage of almost all of their conversations are much more productive.
Yep.
And based on that experience, pretty much everyone who stopped by to have a conversation appreciate the people who are doing this kind of outreach because it's something that's been on their mind and having someone to talk to and clarify some questions they have and then even offer them resources to help them start going vegan. I think that is a really powerful thing. So it's more about just kind of, how we do it for sure.
Well, I agree completely. I mean, I think it's interesting that the Cube of Truth has kind of emerged as the most successful method at a time when, like, just 2 years ago, there were really a lot of other methods that were more popular. I think it's because people tried the other methods, and then they tried Cube of Truth, and they found exactly what you're describing. My father made most of his living out of propaganda, basically. And one of the things he always taught people, this was part of his business, and the propaganda business is just part of his personal philosophy also. He said, you have to decide at the beginning, are you aiming for informational education? That was how he'd term it. Or are you trying to achieve a change in attitude? Attitudinal education. And it's interesting because as vegans, sometimes we're trying to do both. Sometimes it's all one or the other, right? Like, do I really want to get this person specific facts about slaughterhouses or about ecology? Is that what I'm trying to get across here? Or am I trying to get them to ask questions or just question their own attitude? So actually, my dad's classic example of that was when you're teaching white people about the history of Native Americans. Like, you can teach them the dates of specific massacres or specific incidents or how many people died of this plague or that plague. And he says, no, like, most of the time this isn't really the point. This isn't really what you want to get bogged down in. What you want to be focused on is, okay, people have come in with these sets of assumptions about Native Americans. Like, to give an example, they may have the assumption that all Native Americans just lived in tents, that they just lived in teepees. And you're trying to challenge them, say, hey, look, if you actually look at their history of architecture, they lived in cities and towns, they had buildings, like this is part of their history. And it's not about particular facts, it's about attitudes. So I kind of agree with you that Cube of Truth really works, especially if it's about a confrontation with facts, where it's like, hey, look, about greenhouse gases, this matters, this doesn't. We're putting those things in perspective. Guess what? The greenhouse gases from meat, it's way worse than you think it is. I think that kind of approach can be really, really useful for that. But in terms of getting people to question and take on a new attitude, I do think like comedians like Chris Rock, confronting people with unexpected, incongruous contrasts, in his case often about race, but about political questions, whether related to race or not. I do think that can be really effective. And I do think for people who like literally never heard the word vegan before and never thought about it, maybe stand-up comedy and those things can be positive too. And sorry, Quest already knows this about me. Sorry, Fred, I don't even know your name. But the guy in the glasses, you may not know this, but the other form of activism I've been leaning heavily on was actually writing children's storybooks. Writing and then trying to get illustrated and published children's storybooks that deal with the fundamental questions of veganism in a way where parents can read them to kids or a school teacher can read them to kids. Because it's not going to be slaughterhouse footage, right? It's not going to be Cube of Truth for children. How do you actually broach those issues in a way that gets that attitudinal shift? And that's obviously not, it's also not going to be, hey kids, here are specific facts about greenhouse gases, right? That's not how you're going to cross that bridge.
Yeah. Vegan children's books, Rita Oliver.
Yeah. And there are more of them now. I mean, she's not the only person doing, there is a lot more vegan children's literature and children's books with the illustrations and things like that. And Yeah, I do think, I mean, even for adults, not just children, I think even for adults, stories and narratives are extremely powerful tools to use like you said, changing people's attitudes by presenting to them different perspectives in a way that they can evoke certain emotions and empathy, because stories are much easier to relate to. So I definitely agree.
So cool. Look, guys, I just moved back from China. I need colleagues. I need people to protest with, so I'm not protesting alone. So Quest, give this guy my email. I'm going to move to Vancouver in September anyway, so maybe we can stand... Maybe we can stand on the same street corner in the pouring rain and do Outrage Ravines. No? Vancouver's got to be the worst climate for street activism, too. I mean, even Saskatchewan is better for street activism. But I'm trying to put it together, man. So I am really happy to meet you. I already know Quest, but I met one new vegan activist today, which I'm really happy about. And I hope we can get in touch, make something positive happen.
À-bas-le-ciel.